programs and retention programs as they continue to grow.
Brad Dixon, LP in Boom Startup, angel investor, co-founder with Panda Labs with Jeremy, pivoted towards social impact investing, and one of the founding partners of PIP.
Jeremy Lund, board chair of the Community Foundation of Utah and managing director of the University Impact Fund, University Venture Fund Impact Investing at the Sorensen Global Impact Investing Center. We hope to invest in EdTech startups as soon as I get it fundraised.
Hurry up, will you?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Quadruple.
So I'm Wayne Dunford. I'm working on a project with Brigham Young University in Provo in the entrepreneur space about applying new cool stuff like this to how to get entrepreneurs up to speed faster, focusing on what they ought to be focusing on.
My name is Doug Free. I'm the principal of a company called Mitchell Douglas Partners. We've been around for about 8 years. We help companies raise money, mostly entrepreneurs, but we also have a division that does continuous improvement and Kaizen activities for in-revenue companies. And one of our clients is Infinite Mind. They do an IQ, it's called IQ, I don't know if you're familiar with it, Jeff Lamb's company. And we just took Jeff over to China. We have an office in Beijing. And looks like that's going to now start to take off in China. And so I'm interested in what else. We've got a number of investors in China that are hungry for U.S. technology, for education to go over there. Huge market for education. So
Very good.
interested to hear what's going on.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Gary Johnson. I'm a education sales executive. I've been selling in this industry for about 30 years.
Decades.
Yeah, a long time. I'm also a mentor for the EdTech cohort and a Boom investor.
Jessica Blake, and I'm with Boom Startup. I'm the EdTech advisor.
All right, thank you. Randy, do you want to kind of walk us through your initial thoughts here, and we'll have some discussion around the table about it before we...
Sure, we are time constrained.
We are, yes. We got companies showing up at 6:30 and they'll have 20 minutes each, so
Okay.
we're going to have to move quickly.
All right, so that said, let me just, did you all receive this document that kind of defines, talks about what we're intending to do? This really is an opportunity for us to take education and kind of move it into an impact from an active point of view. Almost by definition, EdTech is a social effect. There's, education in and of itself is socially impacting. But how you actually get that to translate into the kind of results that PIN is driving for is another question. So I carved out a number of slides today that kind of set the tone, and it comes off of a meeting that I had with the governor's staff today. The advisor to education, the budget director, the governor's office of economic development, a couple of members of the Chamber of Commerce, and the chief of staff were there. We were talking about two things: innovation and education. It's really the message was the state of Utah needs to be focused on sustainable economic development. We are in a great state where we are financially as a state because of not what has been done in the last 4 years, but what was done 10 and 20 years ago to get us ready. And what we need to be doing now is focusing on what we're doing today that will enable us to be as prosperous 20 years from now as we are today. So what are we doing? So to drive sustainable economic growth, accessible capital, growth-centered innovation, and skilled workforce are the three primary elements that drive sustainable economic growth. Again, in the interest of time, I'm going to fly through this stuff. Just keep pushing the buttons. And you can see that the real fulcrum there is accessible capital, and we can't do a lot to directly affect that. Accessible capital comes from companies doing good and reinvesting it, companies doing good, and then the economy does well, so the government can give tax breaks and incentives, or we're doing well and then we attract outside investment capital. We can only indirectly affect that. But we can directly affect skilled workforce, and we can directly affect innovation. So there are some factors that are influencing education today. It's becoming cost prohibitive. It's not consistently delivering ready-for-market products. There is a large segment that is isolated from the benefits of skill-based education. That's not only domestically, but globally, which is where it really falls into what we're talking about having social impact, is providing that ubiquitous opportunity for skills-based education. The market requirements are very dynamic, and we have to be more adaptive and responsive. There's an element of soft skills that are not being delivered to this, especially millennial generation that we have, and it's become an increasingly important part for employers to be able to have those skills as well. Curriculum, while not totally static, it's very slow to shift and adapt, which is really problematic. Tools and tool sets are being developed at an accelerating pace, which is, again, what you mentioned. You want to see what's out there, and we've got to be able to adapt to those things and take advantage of them quickly. And there's a circular deal that the economy impacts education, which impacts economic growth and personal individual sustainability. So there's a there's a demand then for market-driven education. Okay. So, and I'll talk about skilled workforce more than innovation here, but you got to have equilibrium. If we're developing a skilled workforce, go ahead and hit that again. Without innovation, the job creation is slow and you only get incremental improvement. And if you're building a skilled workforce that don't get jobs, then they're underutilized and frustrated. So that's problematic. If you tip it the other way and drive innovation, you get accelerated advancements, you get new job opportunities, but you have an inability to staff jobs, and you have an even worse problem, which is the shifting demographics of candidate sourcing, which is the problem we have of engineers coming from China and other places and not sourcing them here. So we've created what we call a framework for sustainable growth here that says in order to keep that balance, you've got to have market-driven education and a collaborative innovation focus, okay, which drives personalized learning and skills mastery. And this is terribly important because we're moving to an education base that is not investing for what may be needed in the future, but we have to deliver education that is needed at the moment. And that gets personalized learning and skills mastery. But there's also another thing, and that's the ability to effectively operate and productively contribute in the most likely work environment. So if we're teaching entrepreneurship to a group of students that are most likely going to go work for a Fortune 1000 kind of company, it's kind of like what we're doing in the service. You know, we need to be able to teach them to operate and collaborate and be able to navigate the minefields that exist within, corporate America. Okay? So as an example, and when you'll identify with this, and I think you were at LDS Business College for a while, if I'm not mistaken. As a big picture, and we're doing some work with LDS Business College right now to help them create an enhanced education environment that makes learning relevant, accelerates personalized learning, and deliver the skills that are needed to enable opportunity. And their mission really is now to deliver courseware and skills certification that improve the product being the student as they come out. And they've got a program called Corporate Connect where they're literally going out to companies and saying, L3, Unisys, you tell us what skills you need and we'll build curriculum around those skills. And all you have to do is interview the students. And by the way, out of those interviews, they're getting 95% job placements. You got to be able to make education accessible and certifications achievable. So instead of the trajectory that the college was on for a while to get to 4-year degrees, they've now changed that, and they want to get certifications in the hands of people, not unlike UVU, right? Certifications in the hands of people so they can be more self-reliant and more productive, and be able to, be better fathers, better husbands, better, contributors, and what have you. And that's the focus. And then, of course, extending the value of learning to the underserved to create sustainable self-reliance. And that gets back to, the many that don't have the access to skills-based education. Okay, so that's an example of what we're talking about. And so you take this notion of driving sustainable economy, we're also talking about driving sustainable self-reliance at the individual level, and that gets to the purpose-built skill delivery. Personalized learning becomes a key focus on it. Now, the state of Utah just passed in this last legislative session House Bill 277, which was the first personalized learning initiative in the country. So it's really setting a direction for this whole notion of personalized learning. But it's all about identifying preferred skills for preferred job and then understanding constructive contribution. So I won't go into too much detail, but what we're trying to do is now identify the companies, and this is where it's relevant to what we're trying to do with PIN. Identify the companies that can contribute to this enhanced education environment. It's all about extending and empowering the classroom. It's about exploring and engaging new career options, not just giving somebody a catalog or curriculum and say, figure out what you want to do or what you want to be, and oh, by the way, go see your counselor who has another 249 students that they're counseling with. It's about expanding critical skills, including soft skills, and then ultimately establishing something more than just mastery, but high performance, a concept of high performance. And we've come across companies in all of these categories that meet the 5 criteria that we're putting in place to come into play here. The first being, is this company sustainable? Does it really have a business plan and an opportunity that it will be sustainable? Secondly, is it innovative? Not just the same old stuff wrapped in a new wrapper. Third, will they guarantee interoperability? So we get out engaging with our customers, especially K through 12. Will they guarantee that it's not money ill spent if something changes? Fourth, will they guarantee fidelity? Fidelity, as it's being used in the state of Utah, is the notion of is it implemented the way that the vendor suggested that it's going to be, needs to be implemented in order to get the best results? As an example, a bill in the state of Utah was passed last year that allocated several $1 million for 200,000 Alex software, it's a math program, licenses. 30% of them were never installed. 30% were installed and turned on but never used. Only 5% were used with fidelity to the specs of the vendor. In where it was used with fidelity, performance improved 3 to 5 grade levels. And they found that out after the fact. So there was no program for monitoring and measuring during the process. But so that's why fidelity is very important to us. And then the fifth is there social impact interest? Are they building this company or this app or this whatever just to flip it and make money, or are they really interested in having an impact? So those are the criteria that we use. Okay.
By the way, what does the last one matter if it's successful?
I'm sorry?
Why does the motive matter if it's a successful product that does the wonderful things for the world?
Well, it probably doesn't matter, but we just want to make sure that they're around and kind of doing it for the right reasons, because that gets back to the interoperability and the fidelity. If they're just selling hit and run,
it's a longevity thing there.
That's right. That's right.
Sustainability, maybe.
So the one thing that we're finding is that there is a very broad disconnect between legislators, the State Board of Education, districts, superintendents, and the teacher down at the school. Many times it's more than just a disconnect, there's actually conflict that exists. And those of us that have been in the enterprise world for a long time kind of understand this notion of an enterprise view of things. So instead of a teacher going out to try and find a point solution that's going to fix her problem with math in her classroom, there's a lot of potentially wasted effort. So we've created what we call a personalized learning and skills mastery framework that identifies and starts to define what the delivery layers are. So folks can understand conceptually all the pieces that have to fit together. Then across the top, it's the impact categories, and these apply for K through 12 all the way to a commercial training kind of environment. It has to be interoperable and it has to have fidelity, but our intent is to go out and do the vetting of companies to help it make it easier for the teachers, for the districts, et cetera, to be able to identify companies that they ought to be looking at. There are 4,000 plus companies out there. Nobody has time to look at them all. So our intent is to apply our criteria to the companies that we find and then bring them forward as examples. These are not exclusive, but as examples of things that can be used to solve specific problems. And those impact categories can change based on the environment. So as we start to look at not only domestic opportunities in K through 12 here in state of Utah. We're also now looking at, okay, so we have a program in Africa. What could we deliver, assuming that there are these delivery layers, especially connectivity, what could we deliver that will have an impact on environments worldwide? And so that's what we're starting to kind of formulate in our thinking around how we put this education roundtable together. Let me pause for a moment. Does that make sense?
Are you just looking for Utah companies or?
No, none of these are Utah, let's see. Nope, none of them are Utah companies.
Okay.
So we're looking for them wherever we can find them.
Just looking to fill a space that needs.
Fill the space with the criteria that we know that it's going to be, has a more than reasonable chance of success.
When you say you are looking for it, that's Silver Park Group?
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we're working in conjunction with the Digital Learning Alliance. They've got a database of 1,000+ companies out there, and we're sourcing those companies that we look at from there. We're also intimately involved in the last cohort of the Boom Startup activity. We're dealing with the 3 that you'll see tonight. So we're diving pretty deep to make sure we find good, solid citizens, if you will. Okay?
Is this an initiative of the governor's office or?
No, we're pitching this to the governor's office
Okay.
of an approach to bring things together.
Who's behind it
Okay.
then? Who's funding the Silver Park Group and?
We're a commercial operation. DLA is not for profit. We're a commercial operation, fee-based. Okay. Now, this is an excerpt out of a report that was published by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It was released just this last week. In fact, it's called Innovation That Matters, and it identifies the top 25 digital economy hubs in the country. Salt Lake City came out as number 17. And this is an excerpt out of the supplemental document that defined things that Salt Lake was good at and not so good at.
Does that include Provo?
No, this was just Salt Lake City, very specifically Salt Lake City. But a couple of things that jump out. Number 4, EdTech is becoming Salt Lake's strongest specialization in new digital economies, okay, which is very interesting. But number 5 was really interesting to me. The lack of openness to new ideas points to a cultural challenge in the region. We're kind of parochial. And to the extent that we can start to figure out how to collaborate better, and that was again part of our message to the governor's office, is that there needs to be a coalition of academia, business, and the investment community, the social impact community, to come together to solve some of these problems. Okay? So this coalition I just mentioned, and that's kind of what it looks like. And notice social impact advocates are a key part, which again were called out in this document as an important part of this. The last one, and of course this is nothing more than self-serving. We believe that the Institute itself wraps around that and defines the responsibilities, but specifically for the social impact, promoting a common cause. We invest time and resources to identify innovation that drives social good and champions sustainability of individual businesses.
So Randy, are you going to take this to be the underlying pins of the roundtable, the EdTech roundtable here at
This is kind of the core of the thinking, that we then need input from folks that says, 1, is this consistent with our thinking, our hopes, and our expectations? Okay. 2, is it something represented this way, something that we're interested in? And 3, do we think that an approach, thinking about it just conceptually like this, is going to yield the kind of companies that will, 1, have the impact that we want to have, and 2, yield the kind of returns that we think are necessary to keep us going forward?
Brad, I would just add to that we shot back and forth a few ideas about what should be sort of the founding ideas behind the roundtable for EdTech. They're reflected in this document. When you distill them down to a greater level of detail, a lot of what Randy has presented here as his ideas, I think, are really quite in line with what we want to do. And if you look at the priorities for EdTech objectives, the kind of things, kind of companies we're looking for, the areas of disruption that they're focused on, there's tremendous overlap, and it was almost a one-to-one overlap when we went through it. So I don't know if that's an accident or if that's just the way the market forces are driving everyone right now.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the market forces, you know, we've gone from the adaptive learning processes to personalized learning, and that skill mastery, which, you know, to me is right up Boom Startups EdTech focus.
Yeah.
And, you know, at least from my standpoint, as an investor, that's where I want to focus. So you're almost an advert for like Core Learning Exchange, and how, and actually how you've mentored them to pivot into the market. So I'm very supportive of it, yeah.
I would encourage all of you to send your thoughts and ideas around these topics to either of us or to Kurt, and Kurt can forward them on to us. We're just in the process of really kind of collecting the initial thoughts about how we're going to organize and what we're going to try and promote as part of the roundtable. To that end, and I know we're sort of on a tight time frame here, we do want to look at these 3 companies that we've asked to come speak with us today, and then when they're done, I'd ask that you just stay around for a few minutes and we'll excuse them from the room and collect your thoughts about them as well. Remember that these companies are part of the Boom Startup EdTech program, which means they're very, very early stage. These are, when we see them the first time, they're generally pre-revenue, pre-product. They've made a little bit of progress in the, what are we now, 6 weeks in, 7 weeks in, something like that. About halfway through our program. In another 7 weeks, you'll see a tremendous amount of progress from where they even are today. So with that, I'll go collect them.
You collect them, and let me make
great.
2 additional comments. One, just to reiterate what Steve said, your input is terribly important to us. You know, thoughts, ideas, etc., things that you would like to see reflected in what we do as a roundtable. So please provide your input. Secondly, just a preview of the 3 companies that you'll see and why we think they have relevance to the social impact. It happened to be convenient that they were part of the Boom Startup, but and I don't know which order they're coming in, but the first is called Core Learning Exchange. And they are basically creating a new category. There are learning management systems, there are content management systems. These folks are a personalized learning management system that will allow a teacher to customize a learning schedule, learning curriculum to the individual. It's really fascinating. It's exactly where the market is going. And that could be customized to an existing environment, or if we reach out, you know, to some other country, some other socioeconomic status, it could be then, you know, positioned for that. The second company is Cleverlyware, that is very focused on gamification, preparing people for standardized testing, which again has an impact on their college readiness and career readiness. The third is fascinating. This little company called Zizzle that we here in Utah have the highest per capita dual language immersion in Chinese. And this is an application to help people learn Chinese. And again, that goes far beyond the Utah borders and could have some significant impact, especially where we're going in our relationships with China. So I have a son who opened an office for Audax in Shenzhen, and this is one of those things that would have been wildly helpful for him as they were trying to learn Chinese.